Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again. It is time, finally, to go over the best of 2025. A list that is 1 year and change now in the making. Before we talk about the highs and lows of 2025, how are you, my friend?
Great. I feel really good about my list. I'll be honest, I didn't love my list last year just because I don't feel like I got to listen to a lot of albums as many times as I would have liked, and so I was kind of scrambling at the end. I feel like I was a lot more organized this year, in spite of, moving in September, and kind of, which usually would mean that like a whole month of listening to stuff would go out the window, but it all worked out really well. I'm happy with my list. I have a really nice 50 to 26 that we'll post on social media, and I might make reference to some of those albums as we go. And then we have we chose a handful of honorable mentions that we'll discuss in a Patreon bonus episode, and we'll post that list as well down the line. And then we have a couple of secondary, awards, so to speak, that we'll mention towards the end. But I look forward to this. It's funny. I was talking to Mike the other day, and I was like, I doubt he's going to spend 2.5 hours listening to this episode. So I just asked him if he wanted to see the list. And so I sent it to him, and he goes, "This must have taken you a while." I said, "Yes, 1 year."
And with some of the promos that we got at the end of 2024, it may have been a little more than that. But yeah, definitely 1 year in the making. I think people will find stuff that they may not have heard, that they may enjoy. I think people will be upset that albums they love are not on some of our lists. But at the end of the day, I always say this up front. I want to just say it again before we get into your list. In many ways, this list is a grouping tool. And by that, I mean, if an album is number 8 or number 22, it doesn't really matter all that much. A lot of it depends on my mood and stuff like that. If it's on the list, it was a good album. If it was an honorable mention, I enjoyed that as well. There was a lot of good stuff this year. Don't put too much stock into where something is. Although I will say that the 15 or so albums at the front did lead the pack for me this year. But with that said and that up front, let's get into it. Let's start with you, my friend. I want to hear your list.
Sure. I want to just make quick mention of two albums that were just on the outside, because one of them was in my top 10 for a really long time. And then just slowly made its way out because of more and more releases just being better. And the other one is one that I think is going to surprise you, and I imagine will be a bit higher on your list. But I had at number 27 Dream Theater's Parasomnia album. It was one of the first albums I listened to in 2025, and we covered it for the podcast, and I listened to it 6 or 7 times initially, and then a handful of times I went back to it throughout the year. And it's a really great album. I have to say, I have albums in my honorable mentions that I thought were great, and so it was a really good year. This one just kind of slowly dropped down because more stuff started to come out that I liked more. But every time I went back to this album, I really enjoyed it, but I think special mention should be made for the last 2 tracks, Bend the Clock and the Shadow Man Incident. I think that 26 or so minutes really close out the album really strong. And so that was just on the outside looking into the top 25. At number 26, I actually...
Let me cut you off. I just want to mention something about the Dream Theater album. It's on my list. It's number 18 for me. It's a little bit high. And obviously, I'm joking about cutting you off. But I just wanted to mention, I agree with you. The last 2 tracks of that album make it go from a good album to a really good or a great album. It ends so well. So I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that our score or our range is about the same on this one. Again, I had it at 18, probably a touch high, but I'm a Dream Theater fan, so that's what happens. A little bit of a bias there.
Yeah,
Coming in at 26.
in the recent years, like Dream Theater albums, when they would have the long epic track at the end, it would lose me because I wouldn't spend enough time going back to it. But because of how many times we listened to this, Shadow Man Incident ended up becoming like my favorite song on the album. I think it was my song of the week too when we did the episode, but really, really strong. I mean, to make a song interesting for 20 plus minutes, that's the joy or the magic of Dream Theater. 26, I also had another prog album, Green Carnation's A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia. I really like this album a lot. And Green Carnation has never been a band that I've been like super excited about, but Leaves of Yesteryear was very good, 5 years ago. And I found myself really enjoying this album because I thought that it had a little bit more kind of upbeatness to it and a little less, I mean, oddly enough, an album that has the word melancholia in the title. Especially the title track, The Shores of Melancholia. I like that song so much. It'll be on my playlist. I just wanted to make mention of those two just because there might not be too much prog in the top 25, but these two were definitely just on the periphery of making it in.
I loved this Green Carnation album. I knew it was going to be good, but it really knocked my socks off. It was melodic. It was catchy. It was heavy. It was like a bit of prog, a bit of doom. It just had all the ingredients. And then the finishing touch for me was seeing it live at Prog Power in its entirety. I just thought it was a really good release. My understanding is that parts 2 and 3 are due out, I believe, this year. So I look forward to the follow-up releases that are part of this trilogy. I'm glad you liked it. I wasn't sure if this was the type of thing that would be just a little too dreary for you. But the fact that it came in just shy of the top 25 is a bit surprising, but I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, it was it was really enjoyable for me. It just had a lot of catchiness to it. So, and I actually had a third prog album on the outside too at number 28. So, that was Aryan's Songs No One Will Hear. I enjoyed that a lot more than the last album he came out. So a lot of prog just missing the mark at the top 25. But again, like that, I have so many albums I really enjoyed in, the 26 through 50 and then, 51 through I think 65 I had as my honorable mentions. Just a lot of good stuff this year. And I really made more time to listen to it all. So getting into the actual top 25 at number 25, probably an album that a lot of people have much higher. I enjoyed this a lot, but it's just not my favorite style of music, but still can't deny the greatness of the Halo Effects, March of the Unheard. Michael Stane taking it easy this year with only one band with an album. I think last year there was, I think we had both Dark Tranquillity and Cemetery Skyline with albums this year. Just Halo Effect, but really great follow-up to the debut Days of the Lost. I enjoyed this one a lot.
When this album came out early in 2025, it was number 1 for me for a while until it got pushed down a little bit. The reality is when I went back to it, it stayed really, really high for me because I just thought that every single song was very good to great. And so believe it or not, I have this at number 3. I thought this album was fantastic. And although it got pushed down a bit, it was in the mix for album of the year for quite a while. And then the band would come out with an EP just a couple of weeks ago, which was really good as well, with several cover songs, Danzig being one of them from an album that we had covered, I guess either earlier this year or last year. Just a band that I'm happy was never a one-off. I thought the debut album was good, really, really good. We covered that in the archives. I thought this album might have even been a touch better. I'm glad that this is not just a one and done, but something they seem to be recording, music regularly for. Just great stuff. Great, great, great stuff.
Yeah, this was a lot higher on my list as well. It came out in like the first week of January, I think. And so as more power metal stuff and melodic metal stuff got released, this kind of found its way, much like Dream Theater, kind of barreling down the list just because there was other stuff I enjoyed more, but not to take anything away from it. Great album. Number 24, Cristiano Filippini's Flames of Heaven. They had a new album called Symphony of the Universe. This was also their second album after 2020's The Force Within. I mean, Marco Pastorino on vocals, sign me up. Just really, just solid, really good power metal that was kind of a late entry. I came out in November, I believe, but I enjoyed this one quite a bit.
I enjoyed it as well. It's not on my list. I remember listening to it a handful of times and thinking that this is something that will place for you. So I'm not terribly surprised there. An enjoyable release. And I just thought there was better power metal that came out this year. And so I think it was a victim of the genre having a good year. So I'm sure we'll get into some of those albums as well.
Yeah, there's like 14 more power metal albums, so don't worry. Next on the list, speaking of which, Crowns, Wonderland. This one for me, love the vocals from Alexander Strandell. Will not be the last time he's mentioned on my list today, but I had such high expectations for this album because Operation Phoenix, which was released in 2023, I think was like my number 2 album that year. And so the expectations were kind of through the roof on this one. And it just fell a little bit flat for me. As good as it still is, there was just a lot of stuff I happen to enjoy more. And I just think that it's kind of like, to me, what, Renatus was for Dynasty or Bleed and Scream was for Eclipse. Operation Phoenix was just one of those, like, for me, outstanding albums that I think is just really hard to follow up. Still deserves its flowers, which is why it's on this list, but I can't help but be just a little bit disappointed just because of how much I enjoyed the last one.
On my list as well, I have it at number 14. I really enjoyed this album. And the question that I guess I pose is, are they the best in this genre? Because they have now released 3 phenomenal albums. This is what I want Eclipse to continue to sound like. And I feel like for me, they just don't anymore. Great production, hooks galore, great keyboards, and perfect vocals. I love the album, maybe a touch more than you did. But either way, obviously high praise from the both of us.
Yep. And probably one of my favorite vocalists right now.
I agree with that completely.
And speaking of great vocalists, next on the list at number 22 is Mantric Momentum's Alienized album. This also happens to be the band's second album after 2022's Trial by Fire, which I also enjoyed quite a bit. This is an album from the brother pair of Krister and Turgay Haroy. Krister, known for his work with Divided Multitude. Turgay's known for his work with Beer Maze. This is like a magic blending of those two bands, I feel like, and it really worked for me. I feel like this album and just this band, I know it's kind of a side project, but doesn't get, I feel like, enough love. I just think that the songwriting is really strong, and I love Terrier's vocals. So this one was another one that I think I had a lot higher also, but again, as more stuff, because this one came out in February, as more stuff came out, it kind of dropped, but it still stayed in that top 25. I just really liked it.
It dropped for me as well. I had it high up on my list earlier in the year. It wound up at number 31. But when I went back to it in, I don't know, late November, early December, I was reminded at how good this album is. One of my favorite, maybe my song of the year, is actually on this album. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But there were just some really fantastic songs. Again, phenomenal vocals, like you mentioned, and just that melodic, easy listening type of quality to it that I could put it on whenever I wanted and enjoy it. So great album. Much like you with Crown, though, I'm not sure that I didn't love the first album just a little bit more, but this was a very good follow-up release.
Yeah, I can't remember where I had it ranked when it came out, but 2 for 2 for Mantric Momentum. Great stuff. Next up is number 21. I had Terra Atlantica's Oceans album. This is a band that I remember when I can't remember if it was their first album. No, I don't think it was. I think it was their second album, Age of Steam, that when it came out, that was when they were kind of brought to my attention. They're a band from Germany, but have a lot of like almost South American kind of vibes in the music. There's kind of a folkiness to it. This one, I feel like they, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't been like following the band really, closely over the years, but this feels like they kind of channeled their inner visions of Atlantis and kind of went with a more like ocean / pirate / sea theme. So
Ahoy.
yeah, ahoy indeed. I thought this was a really fun power metal album by a band that I don't know a ton of people really mention enough, but this was a good one for me.
Yeah, it was not on my list, but I hear you. I enjoyed the album. I remember listening to it and thinking to myself, it just missed a little something, although I didn't mind the nautical challenge. There's a touch of Angra on the disc as well. In addition to Visions of Atlantis, it kind of brought me back to Holy Land at least a little bit. But a solid album and well-deserving of its place on your list.
Excellent. Next is another late entry. This was one that I think came out in November. Well, it came out in September. I didn't listen to it until November. I wasn't really even aware of it until our friend Johannes from Skyblazer mentioned it as his, I think he said it was his album of the year. And then the guys from MSR Cast played a song from it on one of their later episodes of 2025, and it really caught my ear. It was Aiden Sky's The Universal Realm. This was just like an out of nowhere debut album by a handful of musicians that I was not familiar with. But this one was like a throwback to like and we mentioned it in an earlier episode, just a throwback to that 90s power metal sound, which I think was kind of the idea. It's definitely got some gamma ray vibes going on, but this is just a really fun power metal album, and I recommend for anybody that might not be familiar with it to check it out, because I thought it was quite a good album.
Yeah, this one I didn't hear until later on in the year as well, and I think again it was a victim of some of the other albums in the genre just being more enjoyable. But I'm not offended by this at all. I thought it was a good album. It just didn't make the list. I had toyed with it for a while, but then ultimately there was just so much other stuff that I couldn't leave out that it got pushed out. So I would say it was probably like in the B tier or something like that. But solid album from a band that nobody's really talking that much about. So go check it out.
It's the Buff Bagwell and Scott Norton of the NWO album for Justin.
Exactly.
Next up at number 19 is Defecto's Echoes of Isolation album. This one was another late entry for me, and it really grew on me very quickly. Big fan of the vocals of Nicholas Sane. And I mentioned this last year when the Ares Descendant album made it onto my list that he sang on. He has such a unique voice that reminds me a little bit of M. Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold. But the melodies on this album, it leans prog, but also has a very melodic vibe to it. And I know a lot of people really like this album. I know Knops had it on his list too. I have to think that you had this on your list as well.
This is a band that I've enjoyed almost everything they've done and enjoyed it immensely. This album in particular was kind of a return to form for them because it was a bit of a heavier sound than they had on their last album. I thought each song had a lot of character. It was very different. No two songs sounded alike. I enjoyed the production. I thought it was technically sound. And it's a band that I would love to see live one day. And so, yes, I had it on my list. It just missed the top 25. I had it at number 27, but a really, really solid release. And I'm wondering if that Aries Descendant performance helped push the album up for you. In other words, it was what, that man is a powerhouse vocalist and he can do it live. And like, that's why I'd love to see this band live one day. But I'm wondering if that performance, just knowing how great he was, almost helped push this up for you, having, kind of seen him for the first time.
Oh, it definitely didn't hurt. Especially because I don't know that I was really even familiar with who he was up until that Aries Descendant album dropped, and then seeing him live, I was like, wow. And you were right. He definitely can bring it live. So really good stuff there. I had been aware of the band Defecto, but I just didn't really put a name to the band as far as the vocalist goes. So, good stuff. I know a lot of people enjoyed that one. Next on the list at number 18, back to the power metal. A band that has just been consistently churning out albums since 1999. Germany's Mob Rules released an album called Rise of the Ruler in 2025. This one was an earlier release. Came out in August. They were just dropping singles though beforehand, like wild. But this is like a band to me that takes the glory days of Iron Maiden and kind of power metalizes it. And they do such a good job. There's the layered vocals in the choruses. I've always found this band to be so catchy, and their albums are, to me, like, rather than hit or miss, are like either good or great. And I think this one leans more into the great realm. I enjoyed this one every time I listened to it, and it helped that I knew about half the songs when the album came out because they were all released as singles.
I agree with everything you said, except I would put it in the good category, not the great category. There are other bands that absolutely shocked me with their return to form, or bands that might have been putting out a string of good albums that phenomenal, put out a great album. This was not one of them, but I understand what you mean. Good album. I understand why you liked it. No question. I thought it was a little unbalanced. I thought that there were some songs that were really good and then others that were a little bit more flat, but I especially knowing your taste, not surprised.
You'll probably feel similar about the next album on the list at number 17, Bloodbound's Field of Swords. This is just another band where, to me, like, every time they release an album, it's just very good. And I always enjoy listening to it. I feel like they, at least for me, since I became a fan of them, which I'm trying to think when it would have been. I know that they had a handful of albums before I really started listening to. It might have been Stormborn or War of Dragons, but they've been very much on my radar since Justin Westmoreland brought them to my attention, and then they played at Prague Power, and I enjoyed their set quite a bit. Much like Mob Rules, I just think this is another solid, really solid album from an established band, and they just keep making good albums. Sweden's Bloodbound at number 17.
When I said that there were bands that had released good albums and then I thought they put out a great album, this is who I had in mind. This Bloodbound album was fantastic, and I might even have this a little bit low on my list at number 26. Just outside the top 25. When I heard this album, I had to listen to it again immediately thereafter because I couldn't believe what I had heard.
That's always a good sign.
Yeah, and it wasn't because I thought that they're not a good band, or I just didn't think they had this album in them at this point. And there's another band that is a little bit lower on my list, but I can say the same exact thing about. This was a really enjoyable release, and surprisingly so in many regards, but kudos to them. They pulled it off. The second half of this album in particular is just fantastic. And it's basically just enjoyable power metal with melody and just enough crunch that you don't feel like you're handing in your metal card. So it was good. And I'm happy that I've gotten to see them live multiple times now. You never know if you're going to get to see them again, but a really, really good band.
I think the next handful of bands are for the most part, established bands that I think had strong albums, much like Bloodbound and Mob Rules did for me. At number 16, Dynasty's Game of Faces. I know a lot of people had this album ranked rather high. I don't know if I saw anyone with an album of the year, but I know it was in some people's like top 5. I thought it was really good. Not like, again, I mentioned earlier, like I feel like they still have yet to kind of reach that Renatus high point, but they still continue to release really good albums one after the other. Much like Eclipse, they don't release albums I don't like. So it's always a matter of where on the list will they end up, not if they're going to be on the list at all. This is where they landed for me. This was another one that, because it came out earlier in the year, it dropped a bit as more things were released, but it still maintained that top 25 standing for me. So I just feel like if a Dynasty album isn't in my top 25, it's automatically a major disappointment.
I now feel bad after that summation because I have it at number 32, but I might also argue it's their best album since Renatus. So it's ironic. I thought it was a really good album from top to bottom. I thought that there was some real earworms on this. It was nothing that you haven't heard before, but it was just really well done for what it was. And again, maybe their second best album in their discography. Number 32, but on a given day, I could see it being in the top 20. It's just a matter of where I was when I hit print on the list and finished the thing up.
Yep. And it doesn't hurt that Nils Molin is just one of my favorite vocalists. He is such a powerful and just infectious voice. So very much enjoyed that one. Getting into the top 15, I have Arion's The Light That Burns the Sky at number 15. I feel like this band is starting to move a little bit more into like a pop metal kind of area than their earlier stuff, but at the same time, the symphonic elements and the really killer vocals from Lassi Vaaranen keep me completely sucked in. This feels like a band that could potentially like blow up on like a XM radio, like metal station. I just feel like there's something really accessible and infectious about this band. And I really enjoyed their last album, Vultures Die Alone. I thought this one might be even a little bit better. Just really some really good songs on here. I think there were singles that were coming out in like late 2024 to kind of like brace ourselves when the album did actually come out in February. I was on board. Really good stuff, and I definitely recommend it. And on my playlist, I have the track "Wings of Twilight" with former MVP Melissa Bonney. So I'm just, as I'm playing this playlist as we talk, I'm just reminded of how many. When you take the best song from all these albums and make it into a playlist, it's just a really good playlist. There's just some really good stuff.
This album was in my top 50 for the longest time, but it was one of the last things that got pushed out by later releases or things I went back to that I couldn't leave out. So it just missed my top 50. But I agree with you. It's a little bit more accessible, a little bit poppier, a little more straightforward. I sometimes think this band is almost without an identity because every album has kind of a different feel to it in many ways. And this goes back to their debut album, which I loved. So I don't know if it's intentional or they're trying out different things or they're trying to find themselves, but whatever it is, this style on this album was great. And so I enjoyed it a lot. I just found myself going back to other things more, and it was a victim of 2025 being a really strong year top to bottom.
Very fair. I'm very curious where or if the next band's album made your list, because this was so weird for me. A band that like makes me think of the early days of us getting into metal, and all of a sudden this band is like back on the scene. We go from Finland to Sweden. Insania released an album called The Great Apocalypse. I never really listened a lot to the earlier Insania stuff, and they kind of like disappeared for, I don't know, about 14 years before coming back with their 5th album. And then this is their 6th album. I enjoyed the hell out of this. Another one that came out a little bit earlier in the year, in June, midway through the year, but I just kept going back to this and it would always put a smile on my face because I'd be like, I can't believe how much I'm enjoying an Insania album in 2025.
I do not disagree. It was on my list for a while. It's on my honorable mention list. It was a little more proggy and a little less power metal than maybe World of Ice was 25 years ago or whatever it was when that album came out. But it was a really good album, much better production than you were used to from the band. And another one of those examples of something that I just didn't know they had this in them at this point, in everyone's lives. But God bless, I enjoyed it a lot as well. And I'm looking forward to the next one, which is not something I think I've ever said about this band in my adult lifetime.
Well, it's because most of their albums didn't come out during your adult life.
That's fair. That's exactly right.
Coming at number 13, we stick around in Europe and make our way to Italy with Labyrinth's In the Vanishing Echoes of Goodbye. Ever since Return to Heaven Denied Part 2, I feel like this band has just been back on the map with power metal after some, I would call, experimental albums. After like Sons of Thunder, I feel like they're just back to what makes Labyrinth such an enjoyable band. Just outstanding vocals from Roberto Taranti, or Rob Tyrant to his friends. Olaf Thorson, just a multiple appearer on this podcast. Legendary internet connection. But man, does he keep himself busy with Labyrinth and Vision Divine. And I remember there was a third project whose name is escaping me at this moment, Shining Black. So like, just he's keeping busy, and the guy is a hell of a songwriter. This is up there with many of the great Labyrinth albums for me.
Yeah, this was really enjoyable. I had it on my list at number 41. It was enjoyable because it was their classic sound with modern production. And I think the biggest question for me was like, was I going to enjoy this when I went back to it again after not listening to it for several months? And the answer was yes. It is one of the better Labyrinth albums, and that is a huge compliment. So it made my list as well. I don't mince words. I've been moving away a bit from power metal. Not that I don't enjoy it. I mean, clearly I have a lot of it on my list. It's just I tend to lean prog. And so there's other albums that got put higher on the list because it's just where I go. But a good Labyrinth album is going to be better than 98% of the stuff that comes out in a given year. And this is no different.
Well, with that being said, we might have a difference of opinions on number 12. This is when you talk about like the band's returns to form. I don't know that necessarily, applies to this situation. I just find that this is a band where they release an album and either I really, really like it or it's just fine and I don't think about it again. And that band is Sabaton. But this album, Legends, I really enjoyed this a lot. And I find that when it comes to Sabaton, a little goes a long way. And so, we've talked about this on the podcast. This was a band that I had, and I'm sure you did as well, had very heavy fatigue on because of more so about just the constant touring. And it was like, even if you weren't going to a Sabaton concert, you were still seeing them because they were opening for Nightwish or opening for Delane or whatever. Like, they were just out there.
They opened for Creator, for God's sake. So I was at a Creator show and there's Sabaton on the stage, which, again, I enjoyed it, but then you'd hear the same songs in the set list. So I definitely suffered from that same fatigue. No doubt about that.
They were a band that I think when they first got on our radar, we were very, very excited about. I'll never forget that time we saw them in Rochester. They were opening for Accept on Accept's tour, and they had a night off and decided to do a one-off in Rochester. It was a Friday night. You and Mike drove up from Long Island. One of the most memorable concert experiences of my life, with about 100 other people. Just an absolute blast. It's incredible to see where this band has gone since then. But this is just one of those albums that I think overall has been stronger than some of their last handful of releases. And again, because it's been a little while since the last one, or at least it feels that way. The last album came out in 2022. So yeah, 3 years I feel like is a nice little break. I was ready to get into it, and I want to say I saw somebody on my Facebook that had this as their album of the year. I wouldn't go quite that far, but I did enjoy this one quite a bit.
I must still be suffering from the Sabaton fatigue, because I agree this is their best album in a long time, or at least in many, many years. And I enjoyed it. I definitely did. I went back to it multiple times. It just didn't land on my list because I think I'm still suffering from that fatigue. But I will say this to their credit. If they played a live show, I would actually be eager to see them again, because it's been at least 6 or 7 years since I saw them with Creator. I think that was in 2019, if memory serves. I could be wrong about that.
We might have saw them more recently than that when they opened for Epica in New York City. Or did Epic open? No, Epic opened for them.
Yeah, I honestly, you might be right, but I'm ready to see them again. I would be happy to see some of this new music live, but the album just didn't make my list. Although I'll be honest, a lot of people had it on their list. I'm in the minority on this one.
I feel like they play on the cruise also like every other year.
Yeah, it's possible, yeah.
Number 11, well, we went to Sweden, we went to Finland, next logical stop, Norway. And this was one of the latest additions to the list, but it was just infectious from the first listen. Moron Police's Pachinko album. This is prog rock the way I want to hear prog rock. Just super catchy, infectious stuff. If this album came out earlier in the year, it potentially would have made it even higher on my list. But really great album. This is their fourth album, and after their first album after the passing of a beloved band member. So I think a lot of people were really anticipating this one for numerous reasons, but I think that they really hit it on this one, and I have to believe it was on your list as well.
It was, and it was very high. I had it at number 5. This band is probably my favorite of the new era of prog bands. And I say that because they're now so consistent with what they do. I think
is that going to be a new genre, the new wave of Norwegian prog rock?
I think if it's not, I think we just coined it. There's something
new shirt.
Yeah. Something so interesting about the way they write songs, because they write these quirky tunes, but with melodies that get stuck in your head. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And every time I listened to this album, I kept thinking to myself, one, I'm happy the band didn't break up after the passing. I think it was of their drummer. Don't quote me on that. But then also just the fact that I need to see them live. I have to see how this would come off in a live setting. Huge fan. Happy it made your list. Obviously made my top 5. I was a huge fan.
I would love to see them live too, but I also feel like they would have to bring along like Thank You Scientist so they can have some like brass instruments, because there's a lot going on here that isn't just your, rock and metal instruments. There's a lot of saxophones and orchestral type things. So yeah, another album at number 10, going to the top 10 that I think will make your list as well. We finally leave Europe and we head over to Israel, and I'm sure you can figure out based on that description which band we're talking about.
Subterranean Masquerade. Oh no, Stardust. I'm sorry.
Yes. With their album Souls, this was their third album. This again had the hard job of following up Strangers from 2020, which I want to say was your album of the year that year. Yes, it was in my top 10 for sure, if not my top 5. It's an album I still go back to. So this is, this one I think we were both like, okay, let's see what they do with Souls, because that was an album, that much like for me, that Crown album, it's a hard album to follow up on. I think they did a really solid job. It's not quite to that level for me, but it's still, to me, it was a top 10 album. Tons of, or not tons, but some fun, guest session musicians like Ross Jennings from Haken. A favorite of mine, Patty Gurdy, did some hurdy-gurdy work on this one. But this just weird, quirky brand of symphonic prog metal. I think it's got a little bit of Devin Townsend in it. I'm so probably of all, as good as Prog Power's lineup is this year in 2026. There are so many bands I'm excited to see. This is the number one band for me that I'm excited to see live. More than Threshold, more than
Wow.
like more than any. Just because for the most part I've never seen them live before, but I am such a fan. Noah Grumman's vocals are so good. I know that she has been part of the Sabaton orchestral tour that they've been doing in over in Europe, which is awesome. Really enjoyed this album. Not quite as good as the last one, but still definitely worth listening to.
I had a similar experience with this album as I did their last album, insofar as the second listen got infinitely better than the first listen, because I remember listening to it the first time and actually not liking it. I was like, ooh, this was not a good follow-up effort. But then again, I had a similar experience with the last album, and it became my album of the year. So the second listen, I was like, okay, I get this. I liked it a lot. It made my list, but it's not as high as you might think. I have it at number 39. And for an album that was my album of the year, for the next album to come in at 39, I guess you could say it was a bit of a disappointment. I had immense expectations. This one was just so quirky that it lost me a little bit, although I appreciated the songs for what they were, and I am so eager, much like you, to see them live. But the album itself, and obviously I liked it, it made the list. Something didn't make it spectacular. It was just really, really good. And I can't even articulate as I sit here what it was. Something was missing on this release. Maybe it was the density, or maybe I needed to go back to it and play it even more than I did. I don't know. But happy to see them. Look forward to it immensely. This one missed the mark for me.
I had a similar experience listening to it as well. On the first listen, I was like, oh man. And it felt a little bit disjointed, like didn't flow as well as the other one. But this was one that I made a point to keep going back to. I listened to it about a half dozen times over the course of the year, and it just was a little bit better each time. It was very dense. So I completely get why, they ranked where they ranked for you. Continuing on with the sophomore efforts making the top 25, another band who I was eager to hear their second release, Memories of Old, a symphonic power metal band from the UK. They had Tommy Johansson as their vocalist on their first album. Tommy, busy guy, and I'll get to him later more than once. But he was replaced by Noah Simmons, who is also in a band called Questbound, who I've mentioned, who haven't released a full-length album yet, but have released some really good singles. And I look forward to seeing what that band has to offer. It's very kind of Twilight Force-esque type stuff. But this, I think, was a really solid follow-up. I thought I was going to miss Tommy so much that I wasn't going to like it. But I have to say, Noah did a really, really tremendous job on this. The songwriting was top-notch, as it was on the first album. And this is just one of those albums where, like, I could completely see it not being on your list at all, but, like, it just was so infectious for me. It's my just style of symphonic, upbeat, fun power metal. There's a unicorn on the cover flying past the gates of heaven. I don't even know what's happening. But if there was like an album that was written for me in 2025, this was probably one of them.
I am so happy you liked it. I heard the vocalist, and I knew that they had gone with a suitable replacement. I thought he was a really good singer. This is a good album. It's not on my list, but so you're right about that. But I understand why this would be right up your alley. It was an enjoyable listen from start to finish, and I thought it was a worthy successor to the original or the debut album, which was gold. So this was a very good release, and I look forward to seeing more from these guys. They're not playing that festival that you're going to, right? Like that one in Norway that you have, or?
No, no, unfortunately, that would have
because they
been
would
very
fit the
cool.
bill completely. I mean, like
Totally.
they may as well be the unspoken third man, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that would be very killer, and probably would be an easy travel situation from a band. Although their vocalist is from the U.S., even though the rest of the
No
band
kidding.
is from the U.K. You know what? I will just double check that. I don't want to misspeak, but I'm fairly certain that Noah, yeah, he's from California.
Wow.
So would be cool, agreed, and would have fit the bill perfectly, like you said. There's two bands that we oftentimes bring up that, we say are the two of the most consistent bands in the world, and sometimes one of those bands, I think you have, like, straight up not added an album to your list because of just that, victim of their own success, as you like to say. I don't think this band that we're going to mention at number 8 is that one for you. Amorphous released an album called Borderland. There's a song called Bones that is just outstanding. This is just a band that, like, for me, if they release an album, it's like an automatic top 15 for me. Like, it's just always good. I always enjoy it. I love the mix of the growls and the clean vocals. Their vocalist, Tommy Yotzen, I'm hoping I got that right. He's so good at both styles of vocals, and it sounds like two completely different singers, which I think is an incredible compliment. And it has that kind of Middle Eastern vibe to it, that almost like sitar kind of sound, but just such heavy guitars, heavy drums. Like, it's just all this heaviness that's rolled up into this super melodic package. I will never get tired of this band. Like, they always just release such good albums.
Truly the model of consistency. I had it not as high as you. I have it at number 29, but a really good release from a band that just, what you're going to get. I don't know if this is their best album, but is every song good, if not great? Yes. You don't have to worry. You can buy an Amorphous album and you just know what it is, and you say it's the same old shit, and you're like, it's great. And so this is how they're able to do this and not bore me like other bands do is a gift, and so they make my list.
Caveat emptor is a pair of words not used when it comes to
right.
Amorphous albums. You can spend your $10 to $20 and have nothing to worry about. Number 7, this one really came to a shock to me especially because the Crown album was ranked at number 23 for me, but vocalist Alexander Strandell was on 2 very good albums this year, and this second one was, I think, way better than the Crown album for me, and that's Art Nation's The Ascendants. This might be my favorite album that Art Nation has released up to this point. Just the songs are just catchier to me than on the Crown album. They're not as heavy as a melodic metal band as Crown, I will say. It's a little bit more on a poppy kind of, it's more closer to pop than metal, I would say, compared to Crown. But the songwriting was out of this world. I enjoyed the hell out of this album.
Although it is not as heavy as Crown, ironically, I think it's the heaviest Art Nation album. So when you look at their body of work, they are trending heavier. And I remember when the first single was released, and I was shocked at how heavy it was for that band. There's a really good album as well. I have this at number 43. I think I like the Crown album more, but at the same time, depending on my mood, I could be very, very, very happy listening to this release because there are hooks galore. And again, best vocalist in metal right now, you'd have to at least put him on the short list of possibilities. This was a great album.
Also, I think for me, Art Nation is way more keyboard forward than Crown, and so I think that for me, that also gives it kind of a push towards the top as well. So every time I see Crown or Art Nation release an album, I'm super excited to hear it. But this one really took me by surprise because if you had asked me to lay down a bet at the beginning of the year, I would have guessed the Crown album would have ranked higher. But that's why we listen to these things
That's
repeatedly. Moving closer to the top 5 at number 6, this was an album that took a really long time for me, which, based on what band it is, was kind of shocking. Ancient Bards from Italy released their first album in 6 years, Artifacts, and it was a little bit of a hard sell for me at first, and I think it's just because the album almost felt like half of the album was a ballad and half of it wasn't, and it felt kind of uneven. And the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about if this is like part 1 of a saga, and then there's a part 2 that has way more like upbeat power metal and heavier stuff, that it'll make more sense. And based on the end of the album with the voice acting, it does feel like it was kind of left story-wise on a cliffhanger. But the more I listened to it, the more and more I just enjoyed the hell out of it. And it's because I enjoy everything that everyone in this band does. Sarah Squadrani is one of my favorite vocalists, end of story. And there's just, it's interesting because over the years, all of the members of the band have gone on to do work in other bands that I think have pulled their attention away from Ancient Bards. Bass player Martino Garatoni is part of Ne Obliviscaris. Federico Gatti, who's the drummer, is the drummer for Windrose. So, like, you know, people are busy. But when this band gets together and puts something together, it's not as, like, beat you over the head power metal as some of their other albums. But I also think that the fact that they experimented and did a little bit more and didn't try to just release another, you know, female singer does Rhapsody. It's so much more than that, and so much beyond that. An album I would understand if it is not on your list. I know Sean, the Metal Pigeon, had it quite high on his, and so it made me feel a little
validated.
more validated in my choice, because I really hadn't heard a lot of people say a lot of positive things about this. But that said, like, an Ancient Bards album that's not like in the top 3, I think in and of itself is slightly disappointing. But I still, this was an album that I definitely will go back to. I listened to it almost a dozen times over the course of the year. It came out early in the year, I think, and it just it stayed up there for me pretty much the whole time, and actually kind of slowly moved its way up. There were a lot of albums we've already talked about that were ranked ahead of it at a certain point in time, and every time I listened to it, I was just like, man, I'm in a good mood when I listen to Ancient Bards. They just put me in a good mood.
I struggled with this one. For the reasons you stated. I just thought it was unbalanced. And if you put it as part of a larger music project, in other words, if another album comes out and is a nice counterpoint to this, by all means, I will go back and revisit it. But as a standalone album, I just thought it was too much fluff around the heavier power metal stuff. And so I tried. I think I listened to it 3 times, and then I just said, this is not working, and I moved on. I didn't dislike it. I just didn't think it was special. And I guess I need to hear part 2 in order to really come to a more robust conclusion.
That's fair. I understand that totally. The other band I was referring to earlier when I talked about the models of consistency, I'm sure you could guess, since we've already talked about Amorphous, is Epica. And this is a band that we had a very different opinion on when their last album, Omega, came out in 2021, because I think I had it at like number 2 behind the Halloween self-titled album. And I think you didn't have it on your list at all. And we were just like just couldn't be further apart. And I remember I chose to do an episode on the album in hopes to kind of like win you over a little bit after that. I don't know if it worked, but I do recall I forgot one of our friends had it as their album of the year that year. So again, I felt validation from outside the podcast. A Spiral was the album that came out in 2025. And this was another one that was kind of a grower for me. I didn't love it at first, but the more I listened to it, it's just a band that's like, again, I listen to it, it puts me in a good mood. It's really, they really don't like do anything too outside the box. They stick to their epica-ness, if you will, much like Amorphous does. I just feel like Amorphous kind of hits more with you than Epica has lately. But I mean, you can't deny it for me. Like, it's just an Epica album is always going to be great. And Again, while there were 4 albums I ranked higher than this, I still thought this was a really good one.
When are you going to choose this one for the podcast? Because it's not on my list. It was the same exact issue that I had the last time, but to your credit, when we covered the album, I conceded that it's a very good album and probably should have been on my list. Perhaps it's the same thing with this one. I listened to it a couple of times and I liked it a lot. It's just, I guess I was gravitating towards different sounds instead of more of the same. And again, I guess that's a testament to Amorphous, that they don't change a damn thing. And here I am eating it up, right? So again, maybe an omission on my part, I will concede, but it just didn't make the list. Good album, just like everything else. They are a great band that has released one phenomenal album after another. It's just not on my list.
I had a feeling that was what was going to happen. And this was another album that like I really had to listen to like 9 or 10 times. Like it just, I feel like maybe it was a little bit denser than typical. And I think Omega was kind of like that too. I do think Omega was a bit better than this one, but again, I still thought it was a very, very good album. And again, it's just one of those things where when I hear Simone's voice and I hear those just those fast orchestrations like on Cross the Divide, I'm just like, all right, I'm in. Though I will say, not probably one of my least favorite cover arts of the year. I just like it doesn't even have the band's logo on it for the love of God.
Hey, listen, I hear you. But if it's not number 1, you've got 4 ahead of it. And I can think of 1 or 2 that might be there. The other 2, I'm even looking at my list and I'm saying to myself, actually, that's not true. I have a feeling I can name 3 of the 4. The 4th one, though, I'm a little, I'm going to be surprised by, I think.
I think you won't be. I think
Okay.
you're not thinking of it, but you definitely know the other 3. At number 4, much like it did 4 years ago, Epica was sitting right behind Halloween, and that's where I have Giants and Monsters at, which I think in and of itself could be considered a disappointment that a Halloween album isn't number 1, much like the self-titled album was 4 years ago. Another album that I don't know what it was with the bands this year, but this was another one that was a grower. I had to listen to this one over a dozen times. And the more and more I listened to it, the more some of these songs that felt almost like they were their own singles in a lot of ways all kind of came together. And there's some really great songs on here. You can go back and listen to our full review of this. Savior of the World and Under the Moonlight, the 2 Wyke Pen songs, were 2 of my favorite songs of the entire year. There were just 3 albums that I enjoyed more, but I mean, it's still a really fantastic Halloween album. For me, there isn't a bad Halloween album. It's just a matter of how good. I assume this album is on your list, but not returning to number 1 like the previous album was.
No, but then again, before we covered it for the podcast, I'm not sure that it would have been on the list. I didn't like the album at first. I thought the production was really weak. It still is not my favorite production on a Halloween album, but it does make the list. It comes in at number 24. Is it their best album? No. Does it need to be to rank high? Also, no. I thought there were some good songs, some great songs, and it was definitely a grower, unlike the last release that kind of hit me from Jump Street. So kudos to them. Kudos to Wyke and now who we can call an alum of the podcast. So I am so excited to see them in April for this tour. I can't begin to tell you.
Should also be mentioned that interview that we did with Wyke has more views than I think every other episode we've ever done combined. So thanks to everyone who listened to that. We're somewhere at like 7,500 YouTube views on that, which is mind-boggling to me as I'm sitting in my bedroom talking to a man I consider an absolute legend. So yeah, if there was an award for most viewed episode of the year, that was easily it. And I think the actual review of the album might have been number 2 because I think that a lot of people listened to it after seeing the interview, which was great. So we reached the top 3. I think number 3 is the band that you hadn't thought about for me, but this one's Battle Beast Steelbound. If this would turn out to be Nora Luimo's swan song with the band, and I think they did a hell of a job on this one. She's going to be missed. We've talked about all the stuff behind it plenty on previous episodes. Marina La Tarraca taking her place, but Battle Beast has overtaken Beast in Black as my favorite Beast of the two. And now we're going to have to see what happens with the band going forward. But as the swan song, this was an album that came out a little bit later in the year, and I listened to it like probably 2 or 3 times and was just like, yeah, this is top 5 for me. And then I listened to it a bit more, and it's just it's a fast album. It's 37 minutes. It's an easy listen. All the songs are catchy. The songwriting is just hits me where it needs to hit. So I'm sure there's people, yourself included, that probably didn't even put this on their list, which I get. It's not for everyone, but I love this band, and I love this album.
Surprisingly, it is on my list. Okay. I liked this album the first time I heard it. I thought the songs were diverse. I thought they each had character. And I was almost upset when Nora left the band, because I was starting to really enjoy their work, more so than I ever have in the past. I'm not as much of a fan as you are in general, but I'll say that it's my favorite album by the band because it's probably the only one that's ever charted for me. So I have it at number 30. Really, really respectable release from them. They, in certain ways, sound more like Beast in Black than Beast in Black does now. So they're I don't know what's going on. There's, time and space continuum is continuing to puzzle me. But this album had such monster hooks. And between the hooks and the diversity, I enjoyed it a lot.
Well said. I'm glad to hear that it made an impression on you. My top 2, I'm sure you can figure out what they are. Just a matter of which one is which. For number 2, it's the Night Flight Orchestra with Give Us the Moon. I think there were questions after David Anderson passed away in 2022, like, was the band going to continue? If so, were they still going to be as good, or were the songs still going to be as catchy? Well, they answered the question with a resounding yes with this album. It is, it really isn't a metal album. It's definitely more of like a metal adjacent AOR release, but you can't not want to just get up and dance when you hear songs like Shooting Velvet and Melbourne May I. Just an outstanding, fun album. I listened to it like a dozen times. It just was so easy to go back to. And it also, I think, provides a nice little break from when you don't want to listen to metal, and you want to listen to something a little bit different, but while still having like a bunch of people that are involved in metal. It's incredible to me that Bjorn Strid is the same singer on this album as he is on the Soilwork albums, because he has such a smooth, clean vocal that he like it's pulled right out of like the 70s and 80s. It's like a time machine band that I look forward to immensely, and I did toy with making this my album of the year, but there was one that was just undeniable for me.
I'm happy that you had this on your list. I was not concerned, but I thought you might have forgotten about this album. I don't know why. We haven't really talked about it, but it was high on my list as well. And I thought it was a bounce back album in many ways. The band was starting to lose me a little bit with their last 2 albums. And then I heard this one, and I thought every song sounded so fresh and so catchy and so inspired. I thought it was just a big step up, and it really had gotten me excited for their performance at Prague Power until they didn't come to Prague Power. So that was disappointing. I would love to see a band like this at a festival at some point. But to rip the Band-Aid off, I had it at number 17. I thought it was a really solid album.
I think had they played at Prague Power, it might have catapulted the album to number 1, just because I would have been riding the high of that performance. That said, number 1 was exactly that, and that was Majestica's Power Train. And I think that seeing them live and performing a lot of these songs at Prague Power catapulted it into number one. It was an album that I came out in February. I enjoyed it every single time I listened to it. But after I saw them live, when I went back and listened to the album, it was almost like it was refreshed and made better by seeing it live. And that's something that happens to me sometimes. Seeing something live just can change how you view something that was recorded in a studio. And that's exactly what happened here. No bad songs. Story in the Night is one of the best songs of 2025, in my opinion. They absolutely slayed it live. I guess it's not really much of a surprise. If a Majestica album comes out and isn't number one, you'd be surprised for me. But we talked about this at the beginning of the year, how many heavy hitter albums there were. And there was a lot of competition from bands like Battle Beast and Helloween and Epica and Amorphous, and Sabaton and Labyrinth, and just like these really, established bands. And while Rainseed has existed for a long time, this really is Majestica's second non-Christmas related release. So I feel like it is right on par with that first release, Above the Sky. It might be a tinge lower for me, but maybe just because I've had 6 years to enjoy Above the Sky, that we'll see how this one does over the years. But for most of the year, I kind of expected this to be my album of the year. Helloween and Night Flight were in that slot at a certain point in time. That said, so was Dream Theater, because it was like the first album I listened to in 2025. So like things move around. But yeah, that's my number one. I can't imagine that it's close to your number one, but I have a feeling it's on your list.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Well, let me start by saying I'm not at all surprised that this is your album of the year. I would have guessed that, but I would have guessed that not just because it's Majestica, but because it was my favorite power metal album of the year. So I had it at number 8. This was a really awesome release. And the second I heard it, I was not only pleasantly surprised, but I got to see them on 70,000 Tons right after this had come out. And I didn't want to hype this up a lot because I didn't want to disappoint you in September if they didn't show up or if they didn't bring their A game. But I knew how good the album was immediately, and I knew how good they were live in January or February of this year. And so I was just kind of not saying anything and slow playing my hand for 8 months until September came around, hoping and praying that their visas would come through and that they would take the stage, right? And when they did, I was able to rip that Band-Aid off as well and just say, phenomenal power metal release. The genre may be slowly dying for me, but this album actually restored my faith. You cannot listen to this album and stay in a bad mood. It is catchy. It is fun. It is an easy listen. So as a power metal fan, I know why it's your number one, but the fact that it was number 8 for me says a lot.
It also should be mentioned that there is an entire song made up of names of Hammerfall albums and songs and one Pretty Made song. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, really well done.
Yeah, just good stuff. And I'll mention Tommy again later on, but this was just a great year. I even looking at the albums that made my 26 through 50, like I would look forward to listening to any album on this list again at any point in time. It was a super strong year, and I think I took more time to listen to. I think what I did differently this year is that instead of trying to listen to everything that everybody's would like, which is what I've done in previous years, which made listening to the stuff I knew that I was going to like less frequent. And so instead, I just kind of stuck to things that I thought I was going to enjoy. You know, I know there's people that have like Coroner high on their list and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't even listen to the album, to be honest. And that stuff will probably come up quite a bit as we go through your list. But I just found that like this really stuck more to where my headspace is when it comes to metal. And I definitely gave a bunch of albums a listen that you recommended that you thought I might have missed. And
none of them landed, I should note, but that's okay.
Well, some of them are on the list, just not in the top 25.
Fair enough.
And I do appreciate that, giving me that little like boost of extra stuff to listen to. But I thought it was a hell of a year, and I feel really proud of the list and happy about how it came out.
All right, excellent list. It turns out that we've got, I think, 8 albums apiece that are on each other's list, or at least 8 songs in your top 25 that were on my list in some form or fashion. And now I will flip the script and count back from 25 for those albums that we that you didn't have, at least in your top 25.
Did you have anything from your 26 through 50 that you just wanted to make a quick mention of? Or
yeah, I'll be brief. I'll be brief. One album in particular was a total bounce back album, and I don't know if it should have been higher on my list, but Brainstorm's Plague of Rats. It wasn't like I wrote the band off, but a lot of their stuff of late was kind of meh. I just didn't love it. This completely broke the trend. I thought it was the complete blend of melody and heaviness that made for an easy listen with quite a few earworms, and was a bounce back effort from them. I really enjoyed the new Brainstorm album. Did you take to that as well?
Yes, I had. It's on my list at number 42. It's okay. Just another one of those albums that kept dropping as more other bands came out with albums. But I remember thinking when I first heard it, I was like, "Wow, this is really kind of like catching me off guard more so than their like last handful of albums have too." So I'm right there with you.
Nice. At number 38, I had the debut album from Beholder, In the Temple of the Tyrant. I thought this was one of the best doom metal albums I had heard this year, well produced, and a band that people just need to keep an eye on, as I expect the next release to be even better. I wasn't expecting greatness from this, but I really enjoyed this album from Beholder.
I listened to it. It was good, just not my favorite genre, but definitely get why people enjoyed it.
Number 36, I had Harakiri for the Skies, Scorched Earth. And I guess you'd classify this as post-black metal. Another dense album, but it was really surprisingly melodic. And every time I'd listen to it, I thought it was enjoyable because I was hearing new things, and it almost had this like intoxicating or trance-like quality to it. Really interesting, and I can't wait to see them on 70,000 Tons, a band that I've just recently gotten into.
Nice. I missed this one. I'll just
this one I didn't recommend it because I just didn't think it was going to hit for you. Another one that I wanted to mention was Joviak at number 28. Autofiction Part 1, Shards. This was probably the last album that I put on the list. I didn't even know that this album was out, but I did see it on Glenn from Prog Power's list. And the second I heard it, I knew that it had to be on the list. And then as I kept listening to it, it kept going up and up and up. This is, in many ways, that melodic prog metal in the DT vein that I love. Just gorgeous melodies, lush production, and a ton of hooks. An album that not that many people are talking about, but I think if they gave it a listen, they'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, I remember, who was it from our Patreon that really enjoyed this? Was it Chris
Calabrese ate this up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to listen to this one, but I did see that there was a lot of chatter in our group that it was a very enjoyable one.
Yeah, so just wanted to mention some of those. You'll see the rest of my list towards the end of the week. But starting at number 25, a complex prog metal album that just took forever to be released. I remember listening to the demo that they were trying to shop to labels like 4 years ago, and it finally came out, and it blew me away. It's one of the most dense albums on my list, and it is Jack the Joker's The Devil to Pay in the Backlands. Great production, wonderfully proficient musicians, and it just got better with every single listen. I know Milton is a huge fan of these guys, but this album had to land on the list because some of these songs were just so quirky but accessible that I had to put it on here.
I don't even think I realized the album had come out. They've been talking about it for so long that I just missed the announcement. I'll have to go back and check this one out. I missed this one completely.
I think there's listen to my playlist, listen to the track that I include. And if that doesn't hook you, then, I don't think there's much of a prayer. But if you like it, you're going to love the album. So I'll just leave it at that. 24 was Halloween, as I mentioned. 23 was a band called Primalus out of France. I've heard some discussion as to whether or not this was an AI created album. I don't think it is, but I would be remiss not to put it on the list because it was so good. Again, that infectiously catchy keyboard driven prog metal, kind of a short release at only 32 minutes, but every single second of this was enjoyable and I had to put it on the list. Did you get a chance to listen to this? Because I think you would like this one as well.
I want to say I listened to one of the songs on YouTube, but I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole album. And then the whole AI thing, I don't know, I don't know if it was true or not, but that kind of turned me off. So I might have to go back and check that out.
Nice. Another band, this one out of Scotland, staying in the prog realm. At number 22, I have Tiberius's Singing for Company. I loved their debut album, A Peaceful Annihilation, that came out 5 years ago. But because it had been so long in between releases, I wasn't sure if this band was done or what was happening with them. But all of a sudden, I see their new album, Singing for Company, comes out. Such an underrated band. They should be up there with all the big hitters like Haken and Soen, but nobody really talks about these guys. Melodic, catchy, just quirky enough to keep you on your toes. I hear a lot of Teramaze in their stuff as well. Just a really, really solid album. I think people should check this one out.
I think I did listen to this once or twice. I liked it, but didn't make the list for me.
Fair enough. 21, going into something a bit heavier. Voidfallens, The Rituals of Resilience. This was a melodic death metal album that I kept going back to time and time again. The opening tune, The Threads of Blood, a specific track that I just absolutely adored. It's heavy. It sounds good, and it was just interesting enough that I would keep going back to it, and so much so that it kind of just went up slowly on my list and never fell out of the top 25.
Nice. This is one I was not familiar with. I look forward to listening to this playlist when you get it over to me.
There are quite a few melodic death metal albums in my top 25, which is surprising because I just, in retrospect, didn't think the genre had a phenomenal year. But then I look at my list, I'm like, well, maybe it was better than I give it credit for because I had the Halo Effect really high up. And then some of these other albums, like I mentioned, one of them is at number 20. It's called Slow Fall, and the album is called Blood Eclipse. I played this album a lot, and for a while I thought it could be the album of the year in the genre, but ultimately it just never caught up to the Halo Effect album that I mentioned earlier. It was just long enough that I felt like I was getting my money's worth, but short enough that I didn't feel like I was getting bogged down by extra stuff. And I find that to be such an important thing the older that I get. Not a bad song to be found on the album, and something that fans of the genre should check out.
Another one on my to-do list. I will mention that even before we started the podcast, these playlists that you would make at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year were always the thing I most look forward to, because there was always just a ton of stuff that I not only missed but never even heard of in the first place. And so it stays the same though, even though we have the podcast. I look forward to hearing your favorite tracks from these albums that you ranked highly throughout the year, and that way I feel a little less out of the loop.
There you go. I'll say this as we now get into the top 20 and whatnot. Now we're getting to albums that, given the mood, all of these albums could have been top 10 or where they were. These are some of the heavy hitter albums for me as we really get into it. At number 19 was a debut album that, if you're a fan of the podcast, you had some exposure to. I listened to this album. I enjoyed it. I listened to it more. I enjoyed it more, and it was like rinse, wash, repeat over and over again. And that's Blood Skies 2025, otherwise known as MMXXV. This power metal album was so good, and I was so happy to see other people catch on to this. I saw it in other people's top 10 lists, and it deserves to be there. This album was such a blend of great songwriting, great vocals. It was between the riffs and the lush keys, every listen was just better than the last, and it never quite cracked the top 10, but I love this album. So shout out to Richard Mosley for his efforts on this. Thank you, obviously, for doing the show's opening tune and whatnot. You are a legend, and this album is great. Please do not let this be the end of Blood Sky.
I think that this whet the appetite for a lot of people that wanted to hear Michael Mills do a more power metal forward album, because everyone's so used to him kind of more in the prog rock, prog metal, Arion, Toe Hider, that kind of stuff. So this, I think, was a really exciting treat. But yeah, I think that we were kind of like insulated to it, thinking like this is one of our, our friends, one of our Patreon members. It wasn't just us. Like, a lot of people really enjoyed it. I have it at number 40 on my list. I liked it a lot. I have to say, like, I'm to the point where I can't listen to the first minute and last minute of the Blade of Nicchi anymore, because I've heard it so many times editing this podcast. But the rest of the album is outstanding, and I have to say, just kudos to Rich for some really excellent songwriting, and this really hit, and I'm glad that other people enjoyed it.
Perfect. As I mentioned, Dream Theater at 18, Night Flight at 17, 16, another melodic death metal tour de force. And this band has had a lot of drama over the years. I won't get into that. I will just say that the new Mors Principium Est album, Darkness Invisible, was phenomenal. It was heavy, slightly chaotic, but the instrumentation was as good as it gets in the genre, and the melodies were fantastic. If it not for the halo effect, this would have been the melodic death metal album of the year. It was that good, and I remember getting a promo for it, falling in love with it right away, and then I heard a higher quality version of it when it actually was released, and it just solidified everything I had thought.
I haven't listened to this one yet, but it makes me want to ask you, where did Omnium Gatherum land for you, if at all?
It didn't land. And it's crazy because that album was loved by a lot of people. And I happen to be a big fan of the band, but that album never landed for me. I don't know why. It had some poppy qualities to it, so you would think it would be more accessible. I just thought it was a good album, like most other albums, but when I put a list together, I'm looking for very good to great, and that was not it for me. I probably should go back to it with a fresh set of ears, because I listened to it several times in short succession, and I'm wondering, with the benefit of hindsight, would I have a different opinion? But it didn't land for me at all.
It was one of two albums that catapulted from the outside of my top 50 into the top 50 and knocked a few things out, probably in the last few weeks. I landed at number 37 for me. I was like shocked. I think it was the second or third time I listened to it at how much I enjoyed their brand of melodic death metal, because of how much melody and how much symphonic elements were involved. So I was just curious if that was something that you enjoyed or not, because I was kind of surprised that they made it into my top 50.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, but at the same time, not completely, just because it's the best parts of the genre combined with things that you would otherwise gravitate towards anyway. So I'm not that surprised, but I'm glad you liked it more than I did, for sure. At number 15, another album that was a bit of a disappointment, but that's just because their last album was my album of the year when it came out. And so Dawn of Solace's Affliction Vortex. This is a brand of not quite doom, not quite goth. I'm not sure what you call it. Not better than the last one, but damn good. Great growls, but they don't overpower the emotion in the songs. And really, they're becoming one of my favorite bands just because every time I listen to their albums, it's like this emotional journey. This one a bit heavier, I think, as I said, from the last release, but just a really good album. But because it wasn't my album of the year, it had to be a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, I remember listening to it and thinking like, man, Justin had that last one ranked really high. I wonder where he's going to have this one. That there's like a whole pile of albums that just fell just outside of my honorable mentions, and that was one of them. Nice.
I'm surprised you liked it as much, that much even, because I don't remember you loving the last album as much as I did. But for this one to land, it means that Baby Chris is spreading his wings, and I like that. So no, I'm good. I'm glad to hear that.
I ranked it higher than Sleep Token. I'll just say that.
Well, I mean, I that doesn't surprise me one iota. I had Crown at 14. Number 13 was an album that was in my top 25 the second I listened to it, and it rose all the way up to 13. This is a band that has been around forever. This is a band I had never really checked out, but their new album hit me like a ton of bricks. The album is called Ascension. The band is called Paradise Lost. And it's like this death doom hybrid with a touch of goth. I believe they have like 17 albums or so. I thought it was slightly unbalanced, but the highs were so good and so prominent that even though 2 or 3 tracks that I thought were merely okay, completely overshadowed by the great stuff. I am going to see them on 70,000 Tons. When they were announced, I'm not even sure that I cared. And now they're probably one of the bands I'm looking forward to the most because this album was so good. So good. And I don't have the benefit of hindsight and the rest of the discography to compare it to. But as a standalone album, as a music fan, I thought it was fantastic.
Nice. I think I listened to this one once or twice. I liked it more than I thought I was going to, just didn't make my list.
I get that. But listen to the playlist. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the standalone track. At number 12, a band that I mentioned on the podcast, and it just was a complete surprise. And although I thought the production was lacking, I thought the songs were so perfect that I had to have it high up on the list. And the band is from Finland. They are a prog metal band called Canvas of Silence, and the album is called As the World Tree Fell. This album was like Old Delane, but with a prog bend, and I was there for it completely. I think that if it had sounded better and had been a little more robust, it probably would have been in my top 5, but I had to knock it down a peg because of that. But the songwriting itself was so good that it makes it a must listen.
Another one that was just outside of the honorable mentions for me. I like this one too. I probably could have stood to listen to it a few more times, but I'm glad that you recommended it because I enjoyed it.
Awesome. And now we get to the top 10, the first band of which, as I look here and read it, well, I should say 11. I'm sorry. We're at number 11. This band probably should be in the top 10 somewhere. I just didn't know where to place it. So it goes to number 11. This is undeniably my black metal album of the year, and it's not even close. This album was fantastic. And from the moment I heard it, well, I shouldn't say that. There's another band in the top 4, which I guess is black metal as well. But this one in particular, I loved. This was the other great black metal album of 2025, and that's Black Braid's Black Braid 3. So heavy, so melodic, but you get these acoustic passages and other interludes that just break up the onslaught that is a black metal album that I thought it was nearly perfect. I had heard great things about this release before it came out, and it absolutely met the hype. The guy is from the Adirondacks region of New York, so he's a local guy. There's nothing about this album that I don't love, because when I think black metal, I think upstate New York. But seriously, just a phenomenal release and something that I found myself going back to because it was just so interesting and well done.
Probably of all the albums that people had ranked high on their list, this was probably the highest one that I just didn't get a chance to hear. Okay. But I heard so many people rank this super high, so not terribly surprised to see it on your list as well. I'll definitely have to go back and check it out. I know it's not my favorite thing. I know upstate New York black metal has never been a strong genre for me. I'm more into upstate New York true metal. But that said, yeah, I look forward to hearing at least one track from it on your playlist.
We go to number 10, and it's my post-metal album of the year, whatever the hell that means. I don't know what the genre is, but I kind of know it when I hear it. That's Psychonauts' Worldmaker. This blew me away the first time I heard it. And then it just got better and better with each subsequent listening. There's something about that dichotomy between the heaviness and that like ethereal sound that really just clicked for me on this album. I know our friend Pat loved a lot of their older albums. I need to go back and do a deeper dive into these guys, but this album landed so good that I had to put it as high as I did.
I'm not going to lie. I thought Psychonauts was a PlayStation 2 game, so I'm clearly out of my depth on this one.
All good. I think you're going to recognize the next one, and I'm a little surprised that it wasn't in your top 25. We talked about Amorphous and Epica and their consistency. Another band that not only is consistent, but just churns out albums is Terra Maze. And this Terra Maze album, The Harmony Machine, I had originally heard 5 of these tracks as what I thought as a standalone EP, but it turns out
not an EP.
It wasn't an EP. It was part of this phenomenal prog metal album, and it's just that perfect modern melodic prog. Catchy, well-produced, some of the best vocal lines that I heard all year. Their discography gets better and better, but this album nobody was talking about, and I'm not sure why, because I would put this up with all of the other Terra Maze albums.
This was an album for me that was the victim of me not going back to it and other albums like surpassing it. And so it just kept kind of dropping. And I probably should have went back and listened to it like one more time, but it did land literally at number 50 for me. I enjoyed this one quite a bit too.
Nice. I think if you go back to it, much like that Tiberius album I mentioned earlier, you will really enjoy them because it's not a difficult listen. It just, you can sit there and enjoy it and not have to think too much. And I think that can sometimes be a very nice thing. Number 8, Majestica. Number 7, Green Carnation. Number 6, a sophomore album by a band that I just see such a huge future for, and that's Philosophophobia. The album is called The Constant Void. My knock on this one was similar to my knock on the Canvas of Silence album. I thought the production was a tad muddy, but the songs were so heavy and melodic and really just a callback to that 90s prog metal that I love that I had to place this where I did. Great songwriting and just one of the better prog metal albums of the last few years, let alone this year. Just a great band, and I think that if they keep doing this kind of stuff, the future remains very bright. I know a lot of people have been talking about them.
Nice. I only had a chance to listen to this album once, so I probably should have gone back and listened to it a few times more, but for that reason it landed on the outside of my list, but I was definitely aware of it thanks to you. So it's just, man, I wish there was some albums I just wish I had more time with, Beholders right there next to Philosophophobia. Dream Wake was another one. Paradise Lost is right next to that. So like a lot of these albums that you mentioned, I really only had a chance to listen to once, and because they didn't like grab me really hard the first time, I didn't go back and give them a second listen that they probably deserved. So yeah, please continue.
So more on Police at number 5. Number 4. This was an album that we got a promo for like 3 months in advance. And as I listened to it, I just couldn't wait for the rest of the world to hear this album. It was my album of the year for a while. And it wound up going down a little bit to number 4. It's an Abstract Illusions, The Sleeping City. This is black metal that incorporates every genre under the sun. So maybe it's more prog than it is black metal. I don't know. But whatever it is, this is somehow very far from the clusterfuck that you would think it would be when you incorporate all these sounds into a release. Wow is the word I have to use. And I was wowed right away. And every listen got better and better because of just the density and the complexity of these songs. I don't know how somebody or a group can think of writing songs like this, but holy moly, this album was fantastic and almost provides a good gateway into black metal for someone who's not looking for that traditional 90s mayhem style. This is like black metal, but going into other areas where when you blend it together, it can be done really, really well.
So this album was a struggle for me. I listened to the first 2 tracks, and I don't know if it was just like the mood I was in or if I was in the middle of like a hectic day at work, but I was just like, nope. And I turned it off and I never went back to it, even though I did use the track Emmett on one of my playlists during the year. So this might be one I need to go back to, but it just, for whatever reason at the moment that I put it on, I was like, this is not the right time for this. And so I kind of cast it aside, but,
I would like to cover this at some point, because I think that with half a dozen spins, you might really change your tune on this. But even more so than this, the Black Braid, I think you would love even more because it's a little more accessible than this. This was a little quirky. The Black Braid was just this majestic journey despite some of the harsh vocals. Either way, I think that both albums, there's potential for you.
Nice. I will definitely give at least 1 or 2 tracks a shot and potentially the rest of the album. Although I have to say, like, it's such a relief when this is over that I almost like don't want to go back and listen to anything else from 2025 and start with a clean slate.
Look ahead.
Yeah, but that said, I will definitely listen to your playlist at the very least.
Well, we get into the top 3. I mentioned the Halo Effect earlier, and now the top 2 albums, both of which I've mentioned in some capacity on the podcast, and I've mentioned to you offline, but I didn't want to hype them up too much because I thought it would show my hand. Before I say anything, do you have any guess as to what these 2 albums might be?
I want to say Royal Sorrow is up there, and I think there was another one that you had recommended to me. It's not coming to my head immediately, so I guess I'll let you do the honors as I'm just looking through this list, and maybe Everon, but I'll let you go.
At number 2, as you had correctly guessed, Royal Sorrow's Inner Deeps. This album was a blend of melodic prog metal mixed with alt rock from Finland. So it was almost like a little bit of, I don't want to say like Circus Maximus type prog, but it was like modern prog metal. But then you got like a little bit of this Poets of the Fall vibe in spots as well. This album has such slick production, great sound effects, fantastic melodies, and the singer is just the icing on the cake. I don't know how this band wasn't on more people's lists, and I was surprised, not upset, but surprised that you didn't like this album more, because I remember you saying to me afterwards, good album, it just didn't like blow you away. And I'm surprised because I thought it might, but I respect the opinion. But for me, number 2 album of the year, and I cannot wait to see these guys in Atlanta.
I couldn't put my my finger on it. I just I listened to it again, and it was fine. Like I like so many people were like calling it this breakout album, and I was like, it's fine. Like I don't know, maybe I needed to listen to it more. It didn't seem like the type of thing that was like super dense that needed 10 listens to get. It certainly wasn't Maestric. So I don't know. I just, some things I guess just don't hit as they should.
Yeah, listen, I get it.
I definitely liked it. I just didn't love it.
Well, I did, but I didn't love it as much as number 1. And number 1, you correctly guessed as well. My album of the year is Everon's Shells. I didn't even realize that this band had come out with their first album in 17 years until some of the guys in our Patreon chat actually reminded me that their new album was out. And so I went to listen to it, and I don't think I was even prepared for how good it was. I don't even know if I'd call it a prog metal album. It's really a prog rock album. So for a metal podcast, I'm telling you that this album just knocked my socks off. Not only was the songwriting top notch, but it was the best lyrics that I've heard on any album this entire year. And I felt that way about 90% of the songs. Like, it was just spoke to me on a level completely different than every other album that's on the list. I didn't think it was possible to come back with an album like this after such a long hiatus. But what you're seeing is all these bands on the list, and that's really the theme of this year, comebacks. Some phenomenal comeback albums from bands that I just didn't expect to get it from. But as far as shells go, just modern prog rock or metal at its finest, it continued to get better with every listen. A+, 9.5 out of 10 quality stuff on this album. I just absolutely adored it.
Nice. This is like in that glut of albums for me, literally jammed in between Paradise Lost and Dream Wake and Philosophophobia and Beholder and Jalusic and just all these albums that I probably listened to like once and thought was good, but didn't go back to just out of time. But this is, I think, of all the albums on your list that weren't on my list, this is probably the one that has the most potential to grow for me. It's just that I thought when I listened to it, it was quite dense and definitely needed more than one listen to land for me.
I don't think it's that dense. I actually think, it's the lyrical content, I think, is very dense. I think they cover topics like the loss of loved ones, the loss of a band member, for example, love and relationships and stuff like that. But the album itself, I thought, was rather accessible, and I think that's why it hit me after that first listen. But go back to it if you have the time, or don't. But at the end of the day, it's my number one. I'm not sure that it was very close. It just was a fantastic release.
Yeah, dense might be the wrong word. It was just a long album. It was
fair enough. It's not a 32-minute album. I agree with that. But
I did want to ask one thing though. There was an album that I thought was super hyped up and didn't make either of our lists, and I was curious if it was on maybe your list from 26 to 50. But I wanted to ask you about the new Maestric album, because speaking of density, this was an album that was so dense, and like, I listened to it again a couple of weeks ago, and I think it finally clicked with me. And so it kind of jumped into my list and ended up landing at number 38. But I feel like if I had given this album more spins, or if we did a full episode on this one, it probably would have ranked higher for me. I know our friend Patrick had this one real high on his list as their, one of his favorite bands. But I was curious where this landed for you, because I feel like the people that gave this album its due amount of time really, really enjoyed it. And like, I remember the first couple of times I listened to it, I was about halfway through and I almost like forgot who I was listening to, just because it was so dense and it was so like all over the place genre wise. But at the end of the day, it was a really good album.
I had it at number 48. Dense is absolutely the operative word here. I knew it was good, but it took many listens for me to really appreciate. And I should note, I've had a promo of this album for, much like Jack the Joker, I've had it for seemingly years. But it had to make the list because I appreciate the greatness. Not every song was a home run for me, but by and large, I thought it was a really good release. It just needed more time. The song Ghost Casino, fantastic track. So I want to point that out. And I'll say that, like, another album that was in the similar, not vein, but in a similar issue that I had was the Between the Buried and Me album. It was just so dense. I never got really into it because I didn't give it enough time. But so it made the list, but I couldn't put it higher up because I just would have had to spend too much time with it. Yeah,
that makes sense. If I hadn't listened to it one last time, it would have been on the outside looking in, but that last listen gave it a little push right into that back, 26 to 50 range.
Nice. So let's do some superlatives before we move ahead and talk about our 300th episode. I can't believe I'm saying that, but again, I don't know that I have answers to all of these, but I just want to kind of have a quick discussion here. Song of the year, anything jump out to you?
Not there wasn't anything like last year where there was a song that I repeatedly went back to all year round, but just based on the number of times I listened to it, the song I listened to most was "Under the Moonlight" by Halloween, the quirky Waiki penned track. So I'm going to make that my song of the year. It's not even the song I put on the playlist for my best of 2025. It's just like my personal favorite song of the year. I actually used the other Waiki tune, Savior of the World, on the playlist, but Under the Moonlight just had that that vibe that I love, that kind of goofy, quirky Halloween Waiki sound. So that was the song of the year for me.
You had mentioned the Mantric Momentum album earlier. There was a song on that album, Time Is My Ally. Love it, adore it, probably my song of the year. But also, not only as a standalone, but just Voyager's Seen Better Days. What a song. Obviously emotional. I just thought it struck every nerve for me. And I'm not going to get into all the details. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but what a song, and talk about something that kind of gets right to the heart. That's one of them.
It will be mentioned again by me as we continue on this list.
Yeah, there you go. Best debut album, obviously. I think The Royal Sorrow was a debut, but if not, Canvas of Silence and Blood Sky all on that list.
I had Blood Sky and Aiden Sky as my two best debut albums. The sky's the limit for these two bands.
Biggest disappointment?
I have to say for me, it was probably Crown, just because of the drop from where the last album landed for me and where the next album landed. Not that I thought it was a bad album at all. It was on my list, fairly high at number 23, but just to go from 2 to 23 is kind of, a pretty serious drop. So that'd probably be my choice.
For me, probably Stardust for the same reason. When it's number one and then you're not in the top 25, but again, not denigrating the album. It was very good. Just disappointment because I had mile high expectations.
What's the opposite of a backhanded compliment? A front-handed compliment? Because that's
kind of what it was.
Because I feel like that's kind of what we
knocked them down a peg.
Well, I just feel like that's what we both gave Crown and Stardust. It's like a compliment, but also do better next time, because the last one was that good.
Yeah, agreed. Best cover art. I said Moron Police. I think their artwork now on every album is just so interesting and unique, and there's something about that artist that I love.
Same for me. It was an easy choice.
Best comeback album has to be Everon. 17 years and you make my album of the year. There was no debate there.
Yep, Insania for me, for similar reasons. Although they had an album more recently.
Doesn't count.
I'm not sure if I heard it.
Best concert. I struggle with this because my memory is so bad nowadays. I really am going to abstain. I don't even know what I would say was the best concert.
I can't remember if I even saw that many concerts last year outside of Prague Power. I put Majestica and Vola's sets at Prague Power as two of my favorites.
I may say
for very different reasons.
I totally understood him. They were both great sets. I actually may say that half the Foo Fighters set that I saw before the thunderstorm at Citi Field, I thought that concert was outstanding.
I would imagine if they got to play their full set, that probably would have been your concert of the year. I saw two, now that you mentioned it, I saw two Pearl Jam concerts, 2 nights in a row, or 2 nights I think it was 2 nights in 3 days or whatever. And those were both very, very good, for different reasons. Getting to experience a Pearl Jam concert with my girlfriend for the first time just kind of had more of an emotional connection to it. But I didn't mention it only because, I was trying to keep it in the metal vein, at least for this part. But the Majestica was just special for me because I had wanted to see Tommy play, Rainseed / Majestica for a dozen years. And even though I saw him a handful of times with Sabaton, experiencing that sponsoring the band, getting to meet them backstage, like him giving me a hug when he realized who I was, just a super emotional moment. And Vola was just like, when they busted out into my favorite Vola song, like they had me hooked. I was just like, the rest of that set, I was just locked in. It's amazing how that can happen. But man, like now they have been 2 for 2 at Prog Power with 2 really fantastic sets. So a little prog and a little power for me.
Nice. Biggest surprise?
Had to be Bush's "I Beat Loneliness" album for no other reason that when you told me, you were like, "Have you listened to this Bush album? It sounds like Catatonia." I was like, "I have to hear this," because I would not have put that together in my mind. And I put it on, and I was like, "Holy shit, Bush is a metal band! Like, what happened?"
I had an answer for this, and I was going to go with Bloodbound or Brainstorm because of the surprise return factor. But yeah, Bush doing Catatonia and doing it really well. I'm changing my answer. The Bush album is on my honorable mention list. You're going to hear a track in my February playlist from Bush, and I can't believe I'm saying this in 2026. I love that album. It didn't make my top 50, but it was just outside.
Did you rank it higher than Catatonia?
Catatonia is not on my list.
Okay, there you go.
So I have Bush doing Catatonia higher than I have Catatonia doing Catatonia.
Maybe Catatonia should have did Bush.
Yeah, I was going to say they should have just done 16 or 17 Stone and released that. I don't know. But that was a surprise. For EP, I've got a handful that I just want to mention. This was the first one. I've seen people have it on their album list. I consider it an EP. That's why I haven't mentioned it yet. It's called Health and Hearth by a band called Phantom Spell. Really quirky prog rock that I just enjoyed immensely. Hanging Gardens, The Unending, another EP in that melodic death doom vein. And then No Spun's Ozai. Loved all 3 of them for different reasons.
Yep, I had Ozai as mine. I didn't listen to a ton of EPs, if I'm being totally honest, but I thought they did a really nice job following up a very well received album that I think is hard to follow up. I think maybe doing an EP was probably the right call, and kind of have like a palate cleanser before the next full length album. But that was the one that most caught my ear.
Most anticipated release of 2026.
I had an album on listed for this, but I listened to it yesterday, so I guess it's not that anticipated anymore. But it was Beyond the Black's "Break the Silence." I don't really know who else is really coming out with albums this year. I know somebody had mentioned that Twilight Force should be releasing an album this year, so I'd probably say that. I just thought that I looked at Loudwire's list of albums that are like set to be released, and there wasn't really anything that screamed out to me. So curious what you had as an answer to this question.
Sabotage. I want to hear that Sabotage album.
If it comes out, yeah, then that's the easy answer. But I don't have any confidence that it will come out, or if it ever will come out, to be honest with you. So fingers crossed. It seems like John's slowly getting better health-wise, so I think that definitely increases the chances of that coming sooner than later.
Your MVP of this year?
This was a tie for me. Initially had Tommy Johansson just because of the Majestic album being number 1, the plethora of great covers he did on YouTube, and the performance of Prog Power. But I decided to add Nora from ex Battle Beast now onto the list as kind of like almost like a career like a career what do you call it, like performance award or whatever. I had 2 albums that she was on in my top 50. The duet album she did with Lauren from Smackbound, Falling Through Stars, I had at number 46. And I just think pairing that with her announcement that she's going to go off on her own and do a solo thing, I thought I would give her flowers here, even though I know she has way more to give. But those were my 2 MVPs. Did you happen to have I answer your question first, and then I have a question for you.
I guess in some ways I'd have Nicholas Sani because I got to see him at
Yeah.
Prague Power. I thought the Mantric Momentum album was fantastic, and one of my honorable mentions is his solo album. So just because he was a constant factor this year, I think I'd go there.
Yeah, I think also worth mentioning too. I don't know why I didn't think of this, but Alexander Strandell with Crown and
No doubt.
Art Nation.
No doubt.
I wanted to ask you, did you have a best cover song?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry if I missed this. I think I'm going to go with Seventh Guild's Fairy Tale. Seventh Guild came out with an album much earlier this year. It was a covers album, and one of the tracks that really stuck out to me was their cover of Fairy Tale from Shaman's debut album. I just really thought that was a beautifully well done rendition. I don't feel strongly about that choice, but that's the one that comes to mind.
I don't think it was a covers album, though. I think it was just that one track. I'm pretty sure.
So that track obviously struck a chord.
Yeah, that album actually landed at number 51 for me.
There you go.
Yeah, that was actually my best cover song as well.
Really?
I thought that was a really nice cover. There wasn't a ton of covers that really caught my ear this year, to be honest, but that was very good and one of my all-time favorite songs. So,
very good. Very good. Best non-album single, I think I mentioned that earlier. Voyager's Seen Better Days, not even close. Next question. I don't know if it was the same for you.
Yeah, I have it on my list too, but honorable mentions go out to Questbound for Call of Celestria and Rexoria's Mesmerize. I look forward to Questbound's debut album, whenever that might be, and Rexoria's next release. I really enjoyed their last album as well.
And lastly, best guest appearance, if any.
I gave this one to the same guy on 2 guest appearances, Ross Jennings of Haken on both Scardust and Lux Terminus. Just always, it's always nice to hear him. I feel like he has such a unique voice, and so I had that Lux Terminus album at number 60, Cinder. I thought it was really good. Just needed, I think, because of the not so much in the vocals, it might have lost some points for me, but it's definitely in my honorable mention group. So yeah, there wasn't a ton that came to mind for me on this category.
Same. So I'll just steal your answer because I really didn't have anything for this one. Shout out to Steve Scott. I think this puts a bow on 2025. Nice. So wrap it up. Anything else you want to add before we talk about next week's episode?
No. I feel like 2026 should be interesting only because I feel like there isn't as much hype going in as 2025 had when we were like knowing some of the albums that we had to look forward to. So it should be interesting, but I have to say, like, 2025 was one of my favorite years for music since we started doing this podcast.
Yeah, I thought, all in all, just to wrap it up, I'll say that I thought it was a really solid year, probably better than 2024 and 2023. I do think that some of those years during the early pandemic when people had no choice but to just write albums, I thought there was great music there as well. But this was a good year for new stuff, returning bands, returning to form. And we'll see where 2026 goes. I've already started listening to some of the stuff that's come out the first 2 weeks of the year.
Nice. I've listened to that one album so far. So my album of the year right now is Beyond the Black.
By default. Next week is episode 300, which is a milestone in and of itself. We had talked, it's usually a surprise, the albums that we cover. We don't tell each other in advance. But for this one, we figured let's have a chat and see what we wanted to do. And we decided to throw it out to our Patreon members. They had to come up with some sort of a consensus as to what they wanted to see us cover. And I think they came up.
I thought this was going to be a lot harder. They came to a consensus pretty quickly, which was.
And I was hoping it would be harder. But you know what? The album they chose was something that I can't argue with because it is in many ways a quintessential metal album from a quintessential metal band. So we are going to go back to 1990 next week and talk about the 12th studio album from Judas Priest, and that is Painkiller, a classic metal album in every sense of the word. We've covered the previous effort on the podcast, and that sounds absolutely nothing like the album we're going to cover next week. I'm
really excited for this, as this is not a other than Painkiller and All Guns Blazing, I don't really know the album all that well. My understanding is that this is Greg Valentine and Jim Neidhart's favorite Judas Priest album, particularly Between the Hammer and the Anvil. Again, if you know, you know. But great choice. I think we've only done one Judas Priest album up to this point,
Turbo.
so we were definitely, the two albums that were received very differently. So I'm glad we're doing a more positively, received Judas Priest album, even though I thought Turbo was pretty good.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit different, but I look forward to it immensely. Here's to episode 300. Here's to episode the best of 2025. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time and are already looking forward to doing this again 1 year from now.
I'm like, this might be the longest break I have from choosing an album. I chose Sabotage's Fight for the Rock, and then we had a request, and then this episode, and then episode 300, and then you will choose the next episode, and then we have another request, and then we have 70,000 Tons to review, and then finally in mid-February I will get to choose an album. But it's good because I haven't chosen one yet. So
nice. I've got some stuff planned. Don't you worry about that. But here's to 2026 and beyond. I will look forward to talking with you soon. And the albums are coming for 2026, so get that list ready.
I know, no rest for the weary or no rest for the wicked if you're a metalhead. But yeah, this is the episode I probably look forward to the most each year, with maybe the exception of the Prog Power recap. Although I have to say, usually by the time we record that, I'm so mentally exhausted that I'm not sure if it's quite as fun as this one is. This was a blast, and I literally woke up this morning like I popped right out of bed and was so excited to have this discussion with you. And so there's almost like a small part of me that's sad that it's over, but also a big part of me that's relieved that we made it through another year. And I feel like I didn't have to do cram sessions nearly as much as I have in the past. So I'm going to try to maintain that level of care in 2026. Yes, the slate is clean, and so let us go out and do our thing. And Happy New Year to all of our listeners. Thanks to everyone for your support. This is the podcast marches on. 300 episodes is crazy. That's going to be quite the celebration next week, and we'll come back with our usual news and what we're listening to and all that stuff. So thanks for sticking with us, and I think I'm going to go gargle some salt water after 2 hours of chatting with you.